Jerusalem, Saturday afternoon, April 8th, 33 AD, 2:15. Pontius Pilate sat in his private chambers staring at a report that made no sense. Jesus of Nazareth was dead. Pilate had confirmed it himself with the centurion who oversaw the crucifixion. The body had been taken down from the cross, buried in a sealed tomb, armed guards posted to prevent anyone from stealing the body. It was finished. The problem was solved. Except Pilate couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. He had been governor of Judea for 3 years. He had executed hundreds of criminals, crucified dozens of rebels and insurrectionists, but none of them had affected him like this Galilean. The way Jesus had looked at him during the interrogation, the calm certainty in his eyes, the complete lack of fear, and those words, "My kingdom is not of this world." What kind of man facing crucifixion speaks like that? Pilate had tried everything to avoid sentencing Jesus to death. He had sent him to Herod, had offered to release him instead of Barabbas, had publicly declared him innocent 3 times. But the crowd had been relentless. The chief priests had been insistent, and Pilate, for all his Roman authority, had been afraid. Afraid of a riot, afraid of a bad report reaching Rome, afraid of losing his position. So he had given the order, had Jesus flogged and crucified, had washed his hands and pretended he could wash away responsibility. But now, sitting alone in his chambers, Pilate felt something he rarely allowed himself to feel. Doubt. What if he had made a terrible mistake? What if Jesus really was who he claimed to be? The chief priests had come to him that morning with an unusual request. They remembered that Jesus had said he would rise from the dead after 3 days. They wanted the tomb secured, wanted to make absolutely certain the disciples couldn't steal the body and claim resurrection. Pilate had granted their request, had assigned a guard detail, had the tomb sealed with the official Roman seal. Breaking that seal was punishable by death. But as the day wore on, Pilate's unease grew. He called for Marcus Quintus, the centurion who had overseen the crucifixion, the same centurion who had declared at the moment of Jesus' death, surely he was the Son of God. Marcus Quintus entered the chamber and saluted, "Governor." Pilate studied him carefully. "You were there when he died?" "Yes, sir." "Tell me exactly what happened." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "He died like no man I've ever seen die, Governor. Most crucified men curse and scream until the end. They beg for water. They lose control of their bodily functions. They die in agony and humiliation. But this man..." He paused. This man was different. How different? He forgave the people crucifying him. He promised paradise to a criminal hanging beside him. He made sure his mother would be cared for. And at the end, he didn't just give up and die. He chose to die. He said, "It is finished," and then he released his spirit. Pilate felt a chill run down his spine. And the earthquake. Marcus nodded. The moment he died, the earth shook. Rocks split. The sky had already been dark for 3 hours, which made no natural sense. And I received a report that the temple curtain tore in too from top to bottom at the exact moment of his death. Pilate stood and walked to the window overlooking Jerusalem. That curtain was 60 feet tall and 4 inches thick. It would take teams of horses to tear it. Yet it tore by itself. "Yes, sir. And there's something else." "What?" "The other soldiers, the ones who mocked him and gambled for his clothes, they're all shaken. Some are having nightmares. One hasn't spoken since we left Golgotha. They know they killed someone they shouldn't have killed." Pilate was silent for a long moment. Then he made a decision that wasn't in any official record, a decision that only one man would survive to tell about. "I want you to select 16 of your best men, your absolute best, not the ones who are shaken or having doubts. I want hardened soldiers who have seen everything." Marcus frowned. "For what purpose, Governor?" Pilate turned from the window. "The tomb is sealed and guarded. The chief priests are satisfied. But I am not. If what that man said is true, If he really does rise from the dead in 3 days, then we need to know immediately. And we need to be ready. Marcus understood what Pilate was implying but couldn't quite believe it. You want me to prepare for the possibility of resurrection? Pilate's expression was grim. I want you to prepare for anything. Select your men. Arm them fully. Tomorrow at dawn, I want them positioned around that tomb, not to guard it. The temple guards are already doing that. I want your men there to observe, to report, and if necessary to stop whatever happens. Stop a resurrection, Marcus said slowly. You realize how that sounds. Pilate's voice dropped to almost a whisper. I watched that man during his trial, Marcus. I looked into his eyes. I have interrogated hundreds of men. Rebels, criminals, madmen. I can always see what they are. But when I looked at him, I saw something I've never seen before. What did you see? Truth, Pilate said simply. Absolute truth. He wasn't lying about who he was. He wasn't delusional. He was simply stating facts. And if he was telling the truth about being the Son of God, then he was also telling the truth about rising from the dead. Marcus felt the weight of what Pilate was asking. You want us to witness a miracle, or prevent one. I want you to come back and tell me exactly what happens at that tomb. Pilate's voice was firm now. And if something does happen, if by some impossible chance he does come back to life, I want you to kill him again. Quickly. Quietly. Before word spreads. Before this becomes something Rome can't control. Marcus stared at the governor. Sir, if he really is the Son of God, if he really does rise from the dead, how exactly are we supposed to kill him? Pilate slammed his hand on the table. I don't know, Marcus, that's why I'm sending 17 of our best men. Now go, select your team, be at that tomb before sunrise, and whatever happens, I want a full report. Marcus Quintus left Pilate's chambers with his mind racing. He had been a soldier for 12 years, had fought in Gaul and Germania, had seen men die in every way imaginable, but he had never been asked to prepare for the possibility of fighting a resurrected God. He went to the barracks and assembled the men he trusted most, 17 soldiers including himself, veterans who had survived multiple campaigns, men who wouldn't panic easily, men who followed orders without question. He gathered them in a private room and explained the mission. Tomorrow at dawn, we position ourselves around the tomb where the Galilean prophet was buried. Our orders are to observe and report everything that happens. The soldiers exchanged glances. One of them, a scarred veteran named Servius, spoke up. The tomb is already guarded. Why do we need to be there? Marcus chose his words carefully. The governor wants an independent report. The temple guards work for the Jewish priests. We work for Rome. Another soldier named Gaius asked the question they were all thinking. What exactly are we supposed to be watching for? Marcus met his gaze. The man who was crucified claimed he would rise from the dead after 3 days. Tomorrow is the 3rd day. The room went silent. Then several soldiers laughed nervously. Centurion, Servius said with a grin. Dead men don't come back to life. We've all seen enough corpses to know that. Usually, Marcus agreed. But this wasn't a usual man. You weren't there when he died, I was. And I'm telling you, something about this is different. He described what he had witnessed. The darkness, the earthquake, the way Jesus had died, the torn temple curtain. The soldiers' laughter faded as they listened. What are our rules of engagement, Gaius asked, if something does happen? Marcus paused. He hadn't told them the full extent of Pilate's orders. If he somehow does come back to life, we are to eliminate the threat immediately. You mean kill him again? Marcus nodded. Those are the governor's direct orders. The soldiers absorbed this. One of the younger men, barely 20 years old, named Titus, spoke up. Centurion, if he really does come back from the dead, doesn't that prove he is who he said he was? Doesn't that make him a god? We don't kill gods, Marcus said firmly. We follow orders. We serve Rome. If this man rises, he becomes the greatest threat Rome has ever faced. A man who can defeat death can inspire millions to follow him, can convince entire nations to rebel, can change the world. Our job is to stop that before it starts. The soldiers nodded slowly. They might not have fully understood the theological implications, but they understood threat assessment. They understood following orders. They spent the rest of that Saturday preparing, checked their weapons, sharpened swords, made sure their armor was in perfect condition. As night fell, Marcus found himself unable to sleep. He kept thinking about the moment Jesus had died, about the certainty in his voice when he said it is finished, about the earthquake and the darkness. Part of him hoped nothing would happen, that they would stand guard for a few hours, see nothing unusual, and return to report that dead men stay dead just like always. But another part of him, a deeper part, knew something was coming. You don't get earthquakes in 3 hours of darkness for an ordinary execution. Around midnight, Marcus walked through the barracks, found Titus, the young soldier, also awake. "Can't sleep, Centurion," Titus admitted. "Neither can I. What do you think will really happen tomorrow?" Titus was quiet for a moment. "My grandmother was from Judea. She told me stories about the Hebrew God when I was a child. Stories about seas parting and cities falling at a shout. Stories about a promised deliverer who would save his people. I always thought they were just stories. But what if they're not?" Marcus sat down on the bench next to him. "What if they're not?" he agreed. "Then tomorrow we might witness something that changes everything we think we know about the world." "Are you afraid?" Titus asked. Marcus considered the question honestly. "Yes, but not of death. I've faced death many times. I'm afraid of being on the wrong side of something bigger than Rome, something bigger than empire and power and military might." Titus nodded slowly. "If he does rise, if we're ordered to kill him again, will you do it?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. Finally he said, "I've been a soldier my whole adult life. I've always followed orders, always done my duty. But if I see a man walk out of a tomb after being dead for 3 days, if I witness something that proves beyond doubt that he is the Son of God, then I'll have to make a choice between my duty to Rome and my duty to truth. What will you choose?" "I don't know yet," Marcus admitted. "Ask me again after tomorrow." They sat in silence for a while. Then Marcus stood. "Get some rest. We leave in 3 hours. Dawn comes early." At 3 in the morning, the 17 soldiers assembled quietly. They wore full armor but moved like shadows through the sleeping city. They positioned themselves around the garden tomb in a wide perimeter, close enough to see everything that happened, far enough to not be immediately visible. The tomb was carved into rock. A massive stone had been rolled across the entrance. The Roman seal was clearly visible on the stone. Breaking that seal meant death. 4 temple guards stood directly in front of the tomb. They looked bored and tired. This was their second night of guard duty and nothing had happened. Marcus positioned his men strategically, 3 on each side of the tomb, 3 behind it, 5 in front spread out behind the temple guards. He kept Titus and Gaius with him at the best vantage point. "Now we wait," Marcus said quietly. The night was still. Crickets chirped. A cool breeze moved through the olive trees. Jerusalem slept, unaware that history was about to change forever. The hours before dawn were the longest Marcus Quintus had ever experienced. Every sound seemed amplified. The rustling of leaves, the distant bark of a dog, the breathing of the men around him. The temple guards in front of the tomb changed shifts around 4 in the morning. The new guards looked even more bored than the previous ones. One of them yawned repeatedly. Another kept nodding off while standing. They clearly didn't expect anything to happen. Why would they? Dead men stayed dead. That's just how the world worked. Marcus checked on his men. They were alert and ready. Hands on sword hilts, eyes scanning constantly. These were professionals. They knew how to wait, knew how to stay focused. Around 5 in the morning, the eastern sky began to lighten. Not sunrise yet, but that pre-dawn glow that signals morning is coming. The world was that strange gray color where shadows haven't fully retreated, but darkness has started to lose its grip. That's when Marcus felt it. A change in the air, like the pressure before a storm. He glanced at Gaius and Titus. They felt it too. Something was about to happen. At 5:47, the ground began to shake. Not violently at first, just a tremor that made the soldiers shift their footing. The temple guards in front of the tomb looked around nervously. One of them said something in Aramaic that Marcus didn't catch. The shaking intensified. Rocks began to rattle. Dust fell from the tomb entrance. This was an earthquake. Marcus had felt earthquakes before. They passed quickly. Natural phenomena. Nothing to fear if you weren't inside a building. But this earthquake felt different, felt purposeful, like creation itself was responding to something. And then Marcus saw it. A light appeared above the tomb. Not the soft light of dawn. This was bright, brilliant. Like looking directly at the sun but somehow not blinding. The light took form, became a figure. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. An angel descended from heaven. There was no other word for it. The being was massive, radiating power, clothed in garments that seemed to be woven from light itself. The temple guards saw it and screamed. 2 of them fainted immediately. The other 2 tried to run, but their legs wouldn't work. They collapsed to the ground, shaking uncontrollably. Marcus forced himself to keep watching even though every instinct screamed at him to look away, to run, to hide from something his mind couldn't fully comprehend. The angel moved to the tomb, reached out and touched the massive stone that blocked the entrance, the stone that would have taken 10 men to move. The angel rolled it aside like it weighed nothing, then sat on it. The earthquake stopped. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the crickets had gone quiet. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Around him, his soldiers were frozen. Some had drawn their swords but seemed unable to move. Others had fallen to their knees. The angel looked directly at the temple guards cowering on the ground. "Do not be afraid," the angel said. His voice was like thunder and music at the same time. "You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen." Then the angel stood and simply vanished. One moment there, the next gone, as if he had never been. But the evidence remained. The stone rolled away, the tomb open, the seal broken. Marcus found his voice. "Hold positions," he commanded his men. "Nobody moves until I give the order." His voice came out rough, shaken, but it was enough to snap his soldiers back to alertness. "Gaius, Titus, with me." The 3 of them moved slowly toward the tomb. The temple guards were still on the ground, some unconscious, others whimpering in terror. Marcus ignored them. He approached the entrance of the tomb carefully, drew his sword. Gaius and Titus flanked him, weapons ready. Together they looked inside. The tomb was empty. The burial cloths were lying there, collapsed as if the body had simply passed through them. The cloth that had covered Jesus' face was folded neatly and set aside. But no body. Marcus stepped fully into the tomb, checked every corner. Nothing. "He is gone," Gaius whispered. "How is that possible?" "We all saw him die." Marcus emerged from the tomb. His mind was racing. They had just witnessed the impossible. An angel, an earthquake, an empty tomb. Everything Jesus had said was true. He had risen from the dead exactly as he promised. "Centurion," Titus said urgently, "what do we do?" Marcus looked at his men, looked at the temple guard starting to regain consciousness, looked at the empty tomb, and remembered his orders. Kill him again if he rises. Prevent the message from spreading. Serve Rome. But how do you kill someone who has already defeated death? How do you fight someone who commands angels? How do you serve an empire when you've just witnessed something that proves there's a power infinitely greater than Rome? "We report to Pilate," Marcus said finally. "Immediately." Gaius frowned. "All of us." "No," Marcus said slowly. The certainty in his voice surprised even himself. He looked at his men, 16 soldiers staring at him waiting for orders. "Most of you will go to the chief priests. Tell them the disciples came during the night and stole the body while you were sleeping. They'll pay you well to spread that story." "Lie," Servius said. "You're ordering us to lie." "I'm giving you a choice," Marcus corrected. "You can tell the truth about what we just witnessed. That an angel of God descended, rolled away the stone, and the tomb was empty. That Jesus of Nazareth has risen from the dead. And you can face the consequences when neither Rome nor the Jewish authorities want to hear that truth. Or you can take the money and tell the safe lie. The soldiers looked at each other. The younger ones seemed conflicted. The veterans were already calculating. Money and safety versus truth and potential execution. "What will you do, Centurion?" Gaius asked. Marcus sheathed his sword. "I'm going to Pilate. I'm going to tell him exactly what happened. I'm going to report that we witnessed a miracle, that we saw proof that Jesus was who he claimed to be, and then I'm going to resign my commission. Because I can't serve Rome knowing what I know now." "You'll be killed," Titus said. "Pilate will have you executed for failing the mission." "Maybe," Marcus agreed. "Probably. But I've spent 12 years following orders without question. 12 years putting duty above everything. And in all that time, I've never been certain I was doing the right thing. Until now. Right now, I know exactly what I have to do." He looked at each man. "You've all served with honor. You've followed every order I've ever given. But this order I'm giving you now is different. I'm giving you permission to choose. Save yourselves and take the money. Or come with me and tell the truth knowing it might cost us everything." 15 of the 17 soldiers made their choice quickly. They would go to the chief priests, take the money, tell the lie. Marcus didn't blame them. They had families, futures, dreams that didn't include dying for a Jewish prophet they barely knew. Servius approached Marcus before leaving. "I hope you understand, Centurion. I have a wife in Gaul, 2 children I haven't seen in 3 years. I'm supposed to retire next year and go home to them. I can't throw that away." Marcus clasped his arm. "I understand completely. Go with my blessing. Tell your story. Collect your payment. Live your life." Servius nodded, relief evident on his face. "What you're doing is brave. Or insane. Probably both." Marcus smiled grimly. "Probably." The 15 soldiers left, helping the traumatized temple guards back toward the city. Within an hour, they would be at the chief priest's residence telling their fabricated story, accepting their payment. The lie would spread quickly. The disciples stole the body. Nothing miraculous happened. Everything can go back to normal. Only 2 soldiers remained with Marcus, Gaius and young Titus. "You don't have to do this," Marcus told them. "I'm not ordering you to come with me." Gaius shrugged. "I've followed you into worse situations. At least this time we're fighting for something that matters." And Titus added, "My grandmother always told me that if I ever saw a miracle, I should have the courage to acknowledge it. I think she'd be disappointed if I took the money and lied." Marcus felt gratitude wash over him. "Thank you. Both of you. Now let's go face whatever comes next." The 3 soldiers made their way back through Jerusalem as the sun was rising. Sunday morning, the city was starting to wake up. People preparing for the day, markets opening, children playing in the streets. Nobody knew yet. Nobody had any idea that the world had just fundamentally changed. They reached Pilate's residence around 7 in the morning. The guards at the entrance recognized Marcus and let them through immediately. Pilate was already awake, pacing in his private chambers. He looked like he hadn't slept. When Marcus and the others entered, Pilate spun around. "Well, what happened?" Marcus stood at attention. "Governor, I need to report that the mission has failed." Pilate's expression darkened. "Failed how?" "The tomb is empty, sir. Jesus of Nazareth is gone." Pilate had expected this answer but still reacted with shock. "The disciples stole the body." "No, sir. That's the story the other soldiers are telling the chief priest right now. But that's not what happened." "Then tell me what happened," Pilate demanded. "And this better be the complete truth, Marcus. I don't have patience for lies this morning." Marcus took a breath and told him everything. The earthquake, the angel descending. The stone rolled away as if it weighed nothing. The empty tomb with the burial cloths left behind. The temple guards unconscious from fear. The absolute certainty that they had witnessed something beyond natural explanation. When Marcus finished, the chamber was silent. Pilate had gone pale. He sat heavily in his chair. An angel, he said quietly. You saw an angel. Yes, sir. All three of us. And at least 4 temple guards. Pilate looked at Gaius and Titus. You confirm this? Both soldiers nodded. Gaius spoke up. Governor, I've been a soldier for 9 years. I don't believe in myths or fairy tales. But what we saw this morning was real. It happened. We can't explain it, but we can't deny it either. Pilate stood and walked to his window, looked out over Jerusalem. The sun was fully up now, a normal Sunday morning, except nothing would ever be normal again. Where is he now? Pilate asked. We don't know, sir, Marcus admitted. The tomb was empty. He could be anywhere. Pilate was quiet for a long time. Then he said something Marcus didn't expect. I knew this would happen. You did? Marcus asked, surprised. Pilate nodded slowly. When I interrogated him, when I looked into his eyes, I knew he was telling the truth about all of it. Being the Son of God, having a kingdom not of this world, rising from the dead. I knew it was true. Then why did you order his execution? Titus asked, then immediately looked shocked that he had dared to question the governor. Pilate didn't seem to notice the breach in protocol. Because I was afraid. Because I chose my position over truth. Because I was more concerned about keeping Rome happy than doing what was right. He turned from the window. And now I have to live with that choice for the rest of my life. What do we do now? Marcus asked. Pilate laughed bitterly. Do. What can we do? We just witnessed proof that the God of the Jews is real and that we executed his son. We confirmed that death itself has been defeated, that everything we thought we knew about how the world works is wrong. What exactly do you expect us to do about that? Marcus had been thinking about this on the walk to Pilate's residence. With respect, Governor, we tell the truth. Pilate shook his head. The truth. The truth will get us all killed. Rome doesn't want to hear that a Jewish prophet rose from the dead. The emperor doesn't want to hear that there is a power greater than imperial authority. The Senate doesn't want to hear that their gods are nothing compared to the God of Israel. Marcus stepped forward. Then maybe Rome needs to hear it anyway. Maybe the emperor and the Senate need to know that they're not the ultimate power in the world. Maybe everyone needs to know that there's something bigger than empire and politics and military might. Pilate looked at Marcus with something like pity. You really think you can change Rome with the testimony of 3 soldiers? You think anyone will believe you? They'll call you mad. They'll say the stress of combat has broken your mind. They'll dismiss you and execute you and nothing will change. You're probably right, Marcus agreed. But I'm going to try anyway. Because I can't live knowing what I know and doing nothing about it. I can't go back to serving an empire built on lies and violence when I've seen truth and witnessed genuine power. Pilate studied him for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled out a sealed scroll from his desk. This is my official report to Rome about the execution of Jesus of Nazareth. It states that he was crucified, confirmed dead, and buried. It makes no mention of resurrection or empty tombs or angels. This is the report that will go into the imperial archives. This is what history will record. He held up another blank scroll. This is for you. Write your account of what happened this morning. Every detail. Everything you witnessed. I'll keep it sealed in my private records. Maybe someday, when Rome is ready to hear the truth, someone will find it and know what really happened. Marcus took the blank scroll. Thank you, Governor. Pilate's expression hardened. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this out of virtue. I'm doing this to protect myself. If this Jesus really is the Son of God, if he really has defeated death, then eventually he's going to judge everyone, including me. And when that day comes, I want there to be some record that at least I preserved the truth, even if I didn't have the courage to proclaim it. He gestured to the door. Now leave. All 3 of you. Marcus, you're dismissed from service effective immediately. Your military career is over. Return your armor and weapons. Leave Jerusalem. I don't want to see you again. Marcus, Gaius, and Titus left Pilate's residence knowing their lives had just changed forever. They returned to the barracks, removed their armor, turned in their weapons. The other soldiers who had been at the tomb had already spread the official story. The disciples stole the body. Nothing miraculous happened. Everything was normal. But Marcus knew the truth, and he was determined that truth wouldn't stay hidden. Over the next few weeks, something extraordinary happened in Jerusalem. Reports started circulating that Jesus had been seen, alive. Mary Magdalene claimed she had spoken with him at the tomb. The disciples said he had appeared to them multiple times. Hundreds of people reported seeing him, and these weren't hallucinations or wish fulfillment. These were credible witnesses, multiple people seeing the same thing at the same time, eating with him, touching him, hearing him teach. Marcus began quietly investigating. He found Mary Magdalene and asked her to tell him what she had seen. She described meeting Jesus at the tomb, how she had thought he was the gardener until he spoke her name, how he had sent her to tell the disciples he was alive. Marcus talked to Peter and John. They described how Jesus had appeared in a locked room, how he had shown them the wounds in his hands and side, how he had eaten fish with them to prove he wasn't a ghost. Marcus spoke with Thomas, who had refused to believe until Jesus appeared specifically to him and invited him to touch his wounds. He found the 2 disciples who had walked to Emmaus and encountered Jesus on the road. He tracked down some of the 500 people who had seen Jesus at one time. Every testimony was consistent. Jesus was alive, truly alive, not a spirit or vision, but physically, bodily resurrected. Marcus wrote it all down, every interview, every testimony, every detail. He kept meticulous records, using his military training to document evidence. And slowly, quietly, his perspective shifted. He had gone from a soldier trying to verify an impossible event to a man seeking to understand what it all meant. One day, about 3 weeks after the resurrection, Marcus sought out Peter. They met privately in a house in Jerusalem. Peter was wary at first. Marcus was, after all, a Roman soldier, one of the people who had participated in Jesus' execution. But Marcus came with humility. "I need to understand," Marcus said. "I saw the empty tomb. I witnessed the angel. I've interviewed dozens of people who say they've seen him alive. I know the resurrection happened. But what does it mean?" Peter studied him carefully. Then he began to explain. Everything Jesus taught for 3 years, everything he did, it was all leading to this moment. He came to earth to pay the price for humanity's sins, to bridge the gap between holy God and sinful people. The crucifixion wasn't a tragedy. It was the plan. He took our punishment, died in our place, and the resurrection proves that his payment was accepted, that death has been defeated, that anyone who believes in him can have eternal life. Marcus listened intently. "So what happens now?" "Now," Peter said, "we tell everyone, Jews and Gentiles, slaves and free, rich and poor. Everyone needs to hear that Jesus died for their sins and rose from the dead, that forgiveness is available, that relationship with God is possible, that death doesn't have the final word." "Can a Roman soldier be forgiven?" Marcus asked quietly. "Can someone who participated in his execution be saved?" Peter's eyes filled with tears. "Marcus, I denied Jesus 3 times the night he was arrested. I swore I didn't even know him. I abandoned him when he needed me most. And yet he forgave me, appeared to me after the resurrection, restored me. If he can forgive me, he can forgive anyone, including you. What do I need to do? Believe that Jesus is the Son of God. Acknowledge that you're a sinner who needs forgiveness. Trust that his death paid for your sins and his resurrection proved his victory over death. Turn from your old way of life and follow him." Marcus felt something break inside him. All the years of violence, all the people he had killed in Rome's name, all the cruelty he had witnessed and participated in. The weight of it had been crushing him for years, but now, hearing Peter's words, he felt that weight beginning to lift. "I believe," Marcus said. "I believe he is the Son of God. I believe he died for my sins. I believe he rose from the dead. And I want to follow him, whatever that means." Peter smiled. Then welcome, brother. You're part of the family now. Marcus was baptized that day. Gaius and Titus, who had been waiting outside, heard what happened and asked to be baptized too. The 3 soldiers who had witnessed the empty tomb became 3 of Jesus' followers. But Marcus knew his story wasn't finished. He had one more thing he needed to do. He needed to return to Pilate with a message. A week later, Marcus requested an audience with the governor. Pilate was surprised to see him. "I thought I told you to leave Jerusalem." "I'm leaving tomorrow," Marcus said. "But first I needed to tell you something. I've spent the last month investigating the resurrection. I've talked to dozens of witnesses. I've verified details, used every skill Rome trained me to use, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that Jesus of Nazareth is alive." Pilate's face went pale. "You've seen him?" "No, but I've talked to people who have. Credible witnesses, multiple independent testimonies that all align. He's appeared to individuals and groups. He's eaten with people. Let them touch his wounds. He's taught them. And tomorrow he's going to ascend to heaven in front of hundreds of witnesses. How do you know that? Because he told his followers it would happen. And everything else he said came true. Why wouldn't this?" Pilate stood and paced to his window. "You're really leaving Rome's service for this?" Marcus nodded. "I am. And I wanted you to know why. Not to condemn you, not to accuse you, but to give you the same choice Peter gave me. You can keep living with the guilt of what you did, or you can ask for forgiveness and receive it." Pilate laughed bitterly. "You think the Son of God would forgive me? I sentenced him to death. I had him crucified. And I was there when it happened," Marcus countered. "I was part of the execution detail. I did nothing to stop it. And yet I was forgiven. Because that's the whole point, Governor. He didn't come to condemn the world. He came to save it. Even people like you and me." Pilate was quiet for a long time. Finally he said, "I can't do what you're doing, Marcus. I can't abandon my position, can't throw away my career, can't face Rome's judgment." "I understand," Marcus said, "but someday you'll face a different judgment, a higher judgment. And on that day, this conversation will matter more than all your power and position combined." He turned to leave. "Marcus," Pilate called, "when you tell your story, when you tell people what you saw that morning at the tomb, do you think they'll believe you?" "Some will," Marcus said, "some won't. But that's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to tell the truth. What people do with it is between them and God." Marcus left Jerusalem the next day with Gaius and Titus. They traveled to Galilee first, then to Syria, eventually to Rome itself. Everywhere they went, they told their story, about the night armed guards arrested Jesus, about the trial and crucifixion, about being sent to stop a resurrection, about witnessing an angel roll away the stone, about the empty tomb and the 100 testimonies that followed. Some people believed them, some mocked them, some tried to silence them, but Marcus never stopped telling the truth. Years later, when persecution of Christians intensified under Nero, Marcus was arrested. He was given a choice: renounce Jesus or die. He chose death. As they led him to his execution, someone asked if he regretted his decision. "Regret," Marcus laughed. "I spent 12 years serving Rome, killing for empire, following orders without question. And in all those years I never knew true purpose, never knew real peace, never knew genuine truth. But from the moment I saw that empty tomb, from the moment I chose to follow Jesus, I finally understood what I was created for. Not to serve empire, not to conquer nations, but to serve the one who conquered death itself. So no, I don't regret anything." Marcus was executed in Rome around 65 AD. But his story didn't die with him. The account he had written, the interviews he had conducted, the testimony he had preserved, it spread, copied and shared among believers, passed from church to church. His story became part of the larger story, the story of how the impossible became reality, how death was defeated, how an empire that tried to crush truth ended up bowing to it. Because in the end, Rome didn't tremble because of military might or political power. Rome trembled because 17 soldiers were sent to stop a resurrection, and only one came back willing to tell the truth. And that truth, once released, couldn't be stopped, couldn't be killed, couldn't be buried. It spread like wildfire through the empire, changed lives, transformed hearts, built a kingdom that would outlast Rome itself. Today, 2,000 years later, the Roman Empire is gone. Pilate is remembered as the man who tried to wash his hands of responsibility. The chief priests who plotted Jesus' death are forgotten. But Jesus is still worshipped, still followed, still changing lives. And somewhere in the historical records, preserved by believers who understood its value, is the testimony of Marcus Quintus, the centurion who was sent to stop a miracle and instead became its witness, the soldier who chose truth over empire, the man who saw the empty tomb and let it change everything. That's the message he brought back to Pilate. That's the message that made Rome tremble, not a message of defeat but of victory, not a message of death but of life, not a message of empire but of kingdom. Jesus is alive. Death has been defeated, and nothing, absolutely nothing, will ever be the same.